When Immigration and Customs Enforcement comes to the North Country and detains someone, they can affect businesses, families, whole communities. These things are hard to report out, though. ICE gives few or no details. Sometimes the people detained fear speaking out. Rumors run rampant. Today we have the story of one man who was detained in Lake Placid and eventually released, who says his story needs to be told. That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Morja Wealth Management, serving the North Country for 3 generations. MorjaWM.com. Advisory services offered through Hightower Advisors LLC. Securities are offered through Hightower Securities LLC, member FINRA, SIPC. And Kinney Drugs, now accepting S3 Nations benefits and OTC Network Wellness benefit cards for eligible over-the-counter health items. Details at KinneyDrugs.com.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Tuesday, July 21st. First up, a paper company based in Glens Falls is transitioning away from making its own pulp. Finch Paper announced the major change last week. The company's been around for more than 160 years. In a press release, Finch said changes in the market mean that buying pulp from other sources is now cheaper than producing it on site in Glens Falls. That'll mean far less business for independent loggers throughout the Northeast that have been selling to Finch. According to the Glens Falls Chronicle, the company said all the hourly employees at the pulp mill and wood yard will be offered other jobs at Finch. A spokesperson for the company told the Chronicle that salaried workers affected by the change will, quote, be considered for open positions. Finch Paper employs more than 600 people in the Glens Falls area. A legal defense fund tapped by New York Attorney General Letitia James is redirecting some of its donations. This comes after experts said the arrangement is an ethical quagmire. Jimmy Vielkind reports for the New York Public News Network.
James has received more than $700,000 toward her legal defense from the Democratic Attorneys General Association. The group says it's redirecting some of that money after Gothamist identified several donors. The state's Commission on Ethics and Lobbying in Government approved the arrangement in December because it believed donors to the defense fund would remain anonymous, but donors to the group are disclosed. Columbia Law School professor Richard Briffault says it raises possible conflicts.
They can just give it and with winks and nods and know where it's going. So it seems a little naive, to be honest.
The Ethics Commission says it stands by its approval. In Albany, I'm Jimmy Vielkind for the New York Public News Network.
The city of Watertown has appointed its first female police chief. Kristen Lyon has worked for Watertown's police department for more than 21 years. She served as a detective, a patrol sergeant, and most recently a police captain. The city announced Lyon's appointment last Friday. She'll take over the top job from Charles Donahue, who's retiring after more than 3 decades with the department. Watertown's police department has been around for more than 170 years and has never had a female police chief until now. Lyon officially begins in her leadership role next Friday, July 31st. Since the Trump administration began its immigration crackdown, ICE agents have conducted several raids across the North Country. They've arrested workers at lumber mills, dairy farms, and most recently, over 20 day laborers and restaurant workers in Lake Placid. Local immigration advocates say many of these detainees were ultimately deported. One man who was detained and later released told his story to David Escobar.
On May 28th at 7:25 in the morning, a maintenance worker from Venezuela was walking to his truck outside the Grandview Resort in Lake Placid. We're not identifying him because he fears speaking publicly could jeopardize his political asylum case.
Voy caminando hacia mi camioneta y veo otra camioneta diferente a las que se parquean ahí.
He says he noticed a truck he'd never seen before. It felt out of place.
Y me pareció muy raro, me asusté. Pero dije, no creo.
He was scared, but he told himself it couldn't be ICE. As he stepped out of his truck, he says 2 men emerged from behind the unmarked vehicle, stopped him, and told him to raise his hands. He says his work authorization documents were inside his car.
Yo le comienzo a decir, mi cartera está dentro de la camioneta, la puedes revisar.
He says he told the agents his immigration paperwork was inside his truck, but they wouldn't let him get it.
No, you are under arrest. Pusieron las esposas.
Instead, they handcuffed him and told him he was under arrest. After his arrest, the worker says he watched ICE agents round up over a dozen more men, throwing some detainees to the ground. He says he heard men scream for help from inside the vans.
Nos encadenaron alrededor de la barriga, las piernas, como si fuésemos unos criminales.
He says they chained the men's waists and legs, which he says made them feel like criminals. He says the officers were celebrating the fact that they had arrested so many people.
De hecho, hasta celebraban como que hicieron su cometido, por decirlo así.
We asked ICE twice about this incident, but they didn't respond. After processing at a local jail, the detainees were taken to the Batavia Detention Center near Buffalo. The worker says the trip took about 12 hours, and he was given only a bottle of water. For 3 days, he wasn't allowed to contact his family. He says he kept wondering whether his wife and children even knew where he was.
Mi esposa creo que cuando se enteró del movimiento en Lake Placid lloró, se tiró al piso porque no.
He says his wife cried and collapsed when she learned about the arrests in Lake Placid. Their family knew this could happen, he says, but never thought it would happen to them.
¿Qué va a pasar conmigo?
This Venezuelan man's experience isn't unique. Keila Grimet, who leads the group North Country Immigrant Allies, says they've heard similar accounts from immigrants detained across the region.
The reality is that people are being surveilled, that they are being tracked, that in some situations we're finding out that they've been told by ICE that they were followed for multiple days across multiple towns until they got to a location where ICE could detain them with very little awareness from the community.
Grimet says the agency's tactics have created a climate of fear, especially among Latino immigrants who she says are more likely to be profiled. Grimet says many of the people she's seen detained in Lake Placid have pending asylum cases and no criminal history at all, far different from the Trump administration's repeated claims that ICE is targeting the worst of the worst. That includes this maintenance worker. He says he's never missed an immigration check-in since moving to Lake Placid 2.5 years ago, making it difficult to understand why he was detained.
No tengo ni siquiera multas de tránsito, ni siquiera en mi país ni acá hay.
He tells me he doesn't even have a traffic ticket. He says when you know you're doing the right thing and working hard for your family and yourself, you're never prepared for something like this to happen to you.
Piensas en que estás haciendo mal.
Rather than accept voluntary deportation, he fought his case. After 2 weeks in detention, ICE released him on bail, but he now wears an ankle monitor.
Yo les pregunté que si eso me lo podían cambiar porque esto me...
He says he asked for an alternative but was denied. He says the ankle monitor is uncomfortable, especially because he works outside on his feet all day.
Para vestirme, para todo.
Still, the worker tells me he thanks God for getting him out of detention and back to his family. The arrests have also changed life in Lake Placid beyond those who were detained. Father John Yankovic, a retired priest at St. Agnes Catholic Church, says many immigrant parishioners now keep an even lower profile.
For the last year, they have gone underground, I guess you might say, or certainly have embraced a low profile. I think being out only when it's essential work and that type of thing.
He says that fear has only grown, especially as reports of violent encounters involving ICE have reached smaller communities, including the recent shooting of an immigrant by federal agents in Biddeford, Maine.
I also sense a deeper concern that some of the killings that have taken place by ICE, people wonder, could that happen in a quiet little community like Lake Placid?
About a month after his release, the worker says he's still looking over his shoulder. He says he won't even park in the lot where he was detained. Given his pending asylum case, I ask him why he's willing to tell his story.
No sabemos si para que hagan algo o para estar atentos.
He says some locals, even people who were born and raised here, don't understand what ICE is doing in their own community. Whether they choose to act or simply stay informed, he says it's important they understand what's happening.
Que me gustaría que sucediera.
And he says that's exactly why he chose not to stay silent. David Escobar, North Country Public Radio, Lake Placid.
David Escobar is a Report for America Corps member. He reports on diversity issues in the Adirondacks through a partnership between North Country Public Radio and Adirondack Explorer. Music today by Eddie Lawrence of Saranac Lake and Mark Corey of Watertown. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.